My name is Maria Juarez, and you're listening to In This Casa. Bienvenidos. In this podcast, I aim to memorialize and honor my husband David's memory by exploring conversations about life and what it's like in my casa, and hopefully in other casas as well. Welcome back to In This Casa, and thank you for joining me. Hi. In this episode, we've just gotten back from taking Sarah back to school for her winter quarter. So it's the beginning of the second week of January. And it was a long trip, but it was a good trip, and it was bittersweet. So Sada would be going back to California for her winter and spring quarters, which would be normally the spring semester here in Texas. So she'll be gone for 2 10-week sessions back to back, which is basically 6 months. She won't be home until June, I believe. So I decided that we were going to take her car out there to California for her so that she would have it, so that she could have a little bit more just freedom and mobility since she was going to be there for so long. So in planning the trip, obviously it's a long drive from Dallas, Texas to San Luis Obispo, California. I believe it's 24 hours, 24, 26 hours, something like that. So I decided to break it up over 4 days. So for this trip, Sarah and I didn't go by ourselves. Bella went with us, and also my sister-in-law, David's sister Janie, went with us, which was really nice. So we left Dallas on Thursday the 4th, and we drove to El Paso. We stayed the night in El Paso. I have a cousin who lives there, so we had dinner with him and his wife, which was lovely. It was great to see them. So on Friday morning, the girls and Janie and I got up early, and we went north into New Mexico and went to go visit White Sands National Park. David and I had been there previously on a road trip. No, we weren't on a road trip. We went out to El Paso for a friend's wedding a few years back, and I needed to bring a fleet car back for work from El Paso to Dallas. So before we turned in our rental that we had for the weekend while we were there for the wedding, we went north to White Sands National Park and checked it out. The two of us back to El Paso, picked the fleet car, and then drove it back into Dallas. So anyway, the girls had never seen it, so I wanted to make sure that we went by there and that they got to experience it as well. So the four of us drove north and went to White Sands and then headed to Joshua Tree. And the drive to Joshua Tree was going to be like 10 hours. So I knew that was going to be a really long day. The drive from Dallas to El Paso is about 8 hours. And then the drive to Joshua Tree was going to be about 10. So I decided that I would find us an Airbnb, and we would also spend Saturday in Joshua Tree so we could relax and decompress. And it wasn't 3 full days of driving. The shortest length of drive was going to be from Joshua Tree to San Luis Obispo, which is like 4 or 5 hours, which is like Dallas to Houston. So it's a pretty easy drive. So the girls and I and Janie headed out, and we drove to Joshua Tree, and it was really nice. And along the way, I did let Sarah drive for a couple of hours on the freeway so that I could just help her and teach her driving on a 2-lane freeway with semis, using the cruise control on her car, making sure that I felt comfortable with her experience doing it and that she got some instruction and wasn't just learning on her own. And even that was bittersweet because that was, something that David would have done, and I was doing it for him, which I love, and I'm happy to do it for him, but it just is heartbreaking to me that he's not here, for those moments. So we spent the night and the day in Joshua Tree. And actually, Joshua Tree's about 20 minutes away from Palm Springs. So on Saturday, we drove into Palm Springs. There was a film festival happening, and like all the actors from the Barbie movie were there, and Jennifer Lopez was there, and just a bunch of people. So we drove around Palm Springs trying to see if we could see any celebrities, which we didn't. And that's okay. Then we went not home, but back to our Airbnb. We picked up some groceries to make dinner. I cooked dinner for my family. It was the first time that I had really cooked a meal since I lost David. So I made the girls and Janie dinner, and we went to bed. And actually, that Saturday morning before we headed to Palm Springs was when I launched my podcast. Yeah, so I woke up early, got myself ready, and then woke them up. And while everybody was getting ready, I got on my computer on the island, and everything had published live, and I did my Instagram post letting everybody know that episode 1 was now live. So that was a pretty monumental moment in my life, and it was really neat to remember that we were in Joshua Tree when it happened. So when we left Joshua Tree, that was Sunday morning, and my original intention was to go straight to San Luis Obispo from Joshua Tree, like kind of head northwest and bypass Los Angeles. I wasn't going to go into Los Angeles. Every time that David and I traveled with Sarah to California for college, whether it was to originally go scout colleges, which we did during the summer of the pandemic, I believe, 2020. Maybe it was the next year, 2021. But yeah, either way, whether it was to scout colleges, whether it was to move her in, whether it was to go back for family weekend, whether it was, all the things, all the reasons we had to go back and forth with her to California, we always flew into LAX and drove up to San Luis Obispo because David just liked to, like I said earlier in previous episodes, he likes to make an adventure out of any of our trips. So we would always fly into LAX, eat at our favorite restaurants, maybe see a couple of sites, maybe visit something we hadn't visited before, and then we would head up to SLO. So I was going to bypass that whole part of the trip. I was not going to go to Los Angeles at all with the girls and Janie, or at least it was my intention to not originally do that. But on Saturday, when we were driving around to Palm Springs and stuff, Sarah asked, Mommy, are we going to go to Los Angeles tomorrow? And I said, no, we're not. We're going to drive straight into San Luis Obispo. And she was like, why? How come we're not going to go? We always go to LA. And I was like, no, we're not going to do it this time because, it's just us girls and it'll add hours to the trip because, we'll have to show your Thea around and we'll stop to eat. And when we get to San Luis Obispo, we still have to check into our Airbnb there, and we were staying in Paso Robles. Which is 30 minutes away from San Luis Obispo. I was like, we're going to get there. It's going to be dark, and we still have to go to Target and some other stores and get things for you. So it's just going to make the day very long, and and she said, well, what else are we going to do? And at the time, I said, no, Zara, we're not. But while I was cooking dinner, I was thinking about it. And maybe I was thinking about it, or maybe David was standing there with me and talking to me and being just like, baby, just do it, And so while we were eating, I told the three of them, we're gonna go to LA tomorrow. So let's make sure we all wake up early so we can head to LA. I want to get there. I want to drive around and take Janie to see a couple of the sites. And then I want to be done with that by lunchtime. We'll stop at our favorite ramen restaurant and then we'll head up to San Luis Obispo. So that was the plan. And that's what we did. So we woke up early, we got coffee and stuff like that, drove into LA. We went straight to Griffith Observatory so that my sister-in-law could see it. I was like, we're not getting out, we're not parking, we're not going to deal with all of this, the tourism crowd. Just, you can see it, take a picture from the car and let's keep it moving. So my sister-in-law took pictures, we got to see it. Hollywood signs right there. So I went around to get a really good vantage point of the Hollywood sign so she could take a picture of it. So we drove around to do that. From there, we headed straight to the Hollywood Walk of Fame so that she could see it's not what people think it is, but she could see it and have her moment and say that she's been there. So we did that. I parked and she got out of the car and she was, taking pictures or documenting the moment. I mapped us to our favorite ramen restaurant and we headed there to go have lunch. And so actually that kind of brings up a funny story that I've just shared with my sister and my mom and Janie's boys, my nephews, since it happened on Sunday. And before I tell the story, I want to remind everybody that this podcast is a judgment-free zone. I'm just sharing my life with you guys. This is an honest look at what it's like in my casa. So as long as nobody's being hurt and that there's not any morality compromises, then no judgment. Okay, so ever since I lost David, I have I know that my emotions are all over the place. And I think maybe after 4 or 5 weeks, I could kind of get to the point where I could not regulate my emotions because I still can't sometimes like I still cry and I just like, I can't control it. It just happens. But I think it occurred to me that I am emotional, and I was reminded that not everybody thinks the way that I do, which is a really great piece of advice that my dad gave me a long time ago. And I try to constantly remember, that to give people grace because not everybody thinks the same way. And I always carried that with me. And I think that, in losing David and all the emotion of it, I lost that, or I forgot that. And I don't remember what reminded me of it, but I was reminded that, everybody around, my assumption should be that they're around because I should give the benefit of the doubt. They have good intentions. They mean well. Maybe they just don't know the right thing to say, but everybody is just trying to support, and they're trying to help. And I'm bringing that up because there was one thing in particular that kept being said to me, and almost immediately, like literally, I think even the day I lost my husband, if not the day, then for sure the day after, different people started immediately telling me that I was young and that I would find love again. And I was just dumbfounded and offended by those comments. I couldn't understand the insensitivity of them. And, I am still in love with my husband. And of course, immediately after losing them, like, that is not where my mind went. And if in somebody else's case, when they lost their partner, if that's where their mind went, that's okay too. I'm not judging. That's just not what happened for me. And that's not how I felt about it. And I didn't want to talk about that. And I started to become really defensive about it. And so it was just a thing that bothered me, and I was really defensive about. So anytime anyone would bring it up, I just shut it down immediately and said, I'm not going to ever get remarried. There's reasons beyond the fact that, my husband was my husband. I have other reasons why, like, my intention right now, at least right now in my head, is that I'm not thinking about it. I'm not looking towards that. Remarriage is not anything I'm thinking about. Okay, so cut to the week between Christmas and New Year's. In the mornings, not every day, but a lot of days, my sister Amanda calls me and we touch base on business. And so she called me one morning that week and we were talking. And it was a rough time because it was right after Christmas and New Year's was coming up. And, I was emotional. Things were emotional. I wasn't the only one emotional. I know that I mentioned that a lot on here, that I am emotional or was emotional, but my family's been emotional too. Losing David has been traumatic and devastating for my mom and my sister and my brother-in-law and the boys. We live here next door to each other. We're kind of in our own little compound here. We call our two houses together a compound. And so it's been emotional for everyone, all the firsts and all the change in losing him. And so I don't remember what we were talking about. I'm sure we were talking about business. I'm sure we were talking about how, things were emotional and hard. And I was trying to lighten the mood before we got off of the phone. So I told her about this dream that I had just had. And I had just had a dream about Jason Momoa. And in the dream, he was flirting with me. And I was like, what, me? Anyway, so I told Amanda that and we laughed about it, and then I told her, maybe that's my husband trying to give me a sign that I can, move forward one day. And she said, yeah, I think so. And I said, but I think the sign means only if it's Jason Momoa. And we laughed. And she said, oh, great. Way to have realistic expectations, sister. And I said, rude. That is realistic. And anyway, we laughed about it. And then, we got off the phone. So New Year's happens. Right away, we had to take Sarah back to school, right? On the 4th, we had to leave to get her there. So we leave right away. We go to El Paso. And then on Friday, when we were driving from White Sands to Joshua Tree, we were in the car and I was in the front seat. My sister-in-law was in the passenger seat in the front. The girls were in the back, or I was driving rather, and my sister-in-law was in the front seat. And we were just talking, and my sister-in-law said, sister-in-law, I wanted to talk to you about something. And I said, okay. And she said, I kind of wanted to talk to you about, like, in the future, if you ever found someone or wanted to date someone. And I said, oh, sister-in-law, I hate talking about this. Like, it's like my biggest pet peeve. Like, I know everybody means well, And I know and I know you're probably just saying it because you love me, or wanting to talk about it because you love me, but I hate talking about this. And Bella even jumped in and was like, yeah, like, mommy doesn't like talking about this stuff. Like, she's in love with daddy still. Like, this is, And my sister-in-law said, no, I know, but the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's just the four of us here, and I want to talk about it, just the four of us, because, I love you, and I want you to know that me and the girls love you, and we're your family, and we want you to be happy, and I just want you to know, not that you need my permission or our permission, but I want you to know that we're okay if you ever, do date or find somebody in the future, that, even if you did, like, I'm still your sister-in-law, and the girls are still your daughters, and we're still your family, even if you don't have to be alone for the rest of your life just for us to still be family. And it was very sweet, and it was very emotional, and obviously I cried, and I told her thank you. And we talked about it a little bit, and then to lighten the mood, I mentioned to them how the week before I had had the dream about Jason Momoa, and I had told Mandy about the dream. And we laughed about it, and the girls laughed, and they were like, oh, Jason Momoa is going to be our stepdad, and it was funny, Okay, so cut to where I started telling this story. So we're in LA, and we get to our favorite restaurant, ramen restaurant. And normally this place has like a 2-hour wait, but there were only like 3 names on the list when we got there. So it's like a 20-minute wait. So we were like, awesome, this is cool. So they go to seat us, and it's a small restaurant, and it only has like 2 or 3 booths, and they're like right by the front window. And I really was hoping we'd get one of the booths so we could like sit really comfortably, and we did. We got sat in one of the big booths by the windows that give a view to the sidewalk patio. And I was really excited about that too, because, I just wanted to be comfortable. And so we ordered our food, and we got our food, and we were sitting there. I was sitting close to the window facing the front door. I have a thing about facing the front door when I'm at restaurants. I like to face the front door. I don't like to have my back to it. So I was facing the front door, but in the booth closest to the window. My sister-in-law was sitting in front of me. Sarah was sitting next to her, and Bella was sitting next to me. So our food arrives, and we're eating, and it's awesome, and it's like a warm hug, and I'm sad. Again, it's bittersweet. I'm so sad to be there without my husband, but I'm happy to be sharing it with Bella and Janie, because we'd never taken Bella. It was Janie's first time in LA, I think. And so the 4 of us are eating, and we're just talking. We're having a great time. And all of a sudden, Sarah's eyes get huge, like she's scared. And I look at her and I'm like, what's wrong? What's happening? And she's like, oh my God, mommy. I'm not realizing she had already taken a picture, or she's taking a picture as she's saying, oh my God, mommy. Because like, Gen Z kids, like, they can move on their phones in like quickly ways that like, I don't even know how they do it, because my phone literally does not move that fast. But anyway, while I'm asking her, are you okay? She's like, oh my God, mommy, talking. She's snapping this picture. And I'm like, what is it? And she's like, is that Jason Momoa? And I'm like, where? She's like, sitting next to you on the patio. So I slowly turned to my right out the window and looked to see if it was, but slowly, right? Because he's a person, and I don't want to be that kind of person who's like all up in somebody's business and invading their privacy. So I slowly turn, I look, and sure enough, it's Jason Momoa sitting over there with a couple of people having lunch, I guess. I don't know. And so I turned back to Sarah and I said, yes, that's Jason Momoa. And she immediately started bawling, and I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, oh my God, like, we've come to LA so many times with Daddy, and he would always look for celebrities, and we never saw any of them. He never saw any of them. And I'm like, I know, Mama, it's okay. And she's like, and we were in Palm Springs yesterday looking for celebrities, and we didn't see anybody. And I'm like, I know, it's okay. And she's like, and we weren't even going to look for anybody today. And there's Jason Momoa. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and he's going to be my stepdad. And she's just bawling, and we're laughing. And anyway, so we finished eating, and we paid, and we left the restaurant and he was still sitting there eating, and we just walked right past him, and we got in the car and we left and we headed to San Luis Obispo, and we laughed and we talked about it the whole way. And we were just like, what are the chances? You know, like I had just had a dream and told Amanda about it like a week and a few days before. Then I'm retelling the story to my girls and my sister-in-law a week later. And then a couple days later, there he is in the flesh, just sitting at this restaurant. And, you know, I just was telling the girls, like, what are the chances that that would happen? Like, what the fuck is the universe trying to tell me? You know, anyway, so that's the story. So it set us on a good note driving up to San Luis Obispo. We drove there. We ran all our errands. We went to a Target. We got her set up in her room. Her tia got to see where she's going to be living this semester. And then we went and checked into our Airbnb. The next morning, Sarah drove Janie and Bella and I to a coffee shop and dropped us off. She had class, and we Ubered to the airport. And here we are, back from San Luis Obispo and back from taking Sarah back to school. So that was the trip, and it was a success. We got my girl there, and we got to spend some good time together. I'm really happy that Janie got to spend some time with the girls, just us, you know, just them. I think that's important for their relationship, especially now that we've lost David. And like I said, the trip was bittersweet. You know, I'm blessed and I'm lucky that I am able to do those things for my daughters, with my sister-in-law. But I am, you know, just devastated to be doing those things without my husband. Join me here next Saturday, and we can continue to talk about what it's like in my casa. And if you're interested in talking about what it's like in your casa with me, send me an email. I'll talk to you soon.